If you've ever worked in fast food, you know how it is. The shifts are long, the pay isn't great, and customers act like they're the only ones who matter. But at the end of the day, you do the job because you need the money, and for the most part, it's easy. Just routine. Pick up orders, deliver them, and move on to the next one. That's what I kept telling myself as I pulled into the Wendy's parking lot for another shift. It was a Friday night, close to 6 p.m., and I was scheduled until closing. Friday nights were always hectic. Cars lined up around the drive-thru, impatient customers honking, and the kitchen crew busting their asses to keep up. But it wasn't the in-store chaos that got to me. It was the deliveries. Most nights were uneventful. People ordering food, I'd drop it off, maybe get a tip, maybe not. But every once in a while, something just felt off. I shook off the unease as I walked inside. "Yo, what's up, Mike?" My co-worker Jaden nodded at me from the drive-thru window. "Same shit, different day," I muttered, tying my apron. Jaden smirked. "Get ready, man. We got a shitload of orders tonight." I sighed and grabbed the first bag of deliveries. The night had just begun. By 9 p.m., I was deep into my shift, working in a steady rhythm. Pick up, drive, drop off, repeat. Then, I got the order that changed everything. It came through the system like any other. One Baconator meal, a large fries, and a chocolate frosty. Nothing strange about the food itself, but when I checked the address, my stomach twisted. It wasn't in our usual delivery zone. I frowned at the screen. The address was for someplace way out, near the edge of town, past a stretch of woods, and barely any houses. I had driven down that road before, but never for a delivery. "You sure this is in our zone?" I asked Tanya, the manager. She glanced at the screen, then shrugged. "It's close enough. Just take it. You got time for one more before we close up." I hesitated, but grabbed the order. It was just food. What was the worst that could happen? I plugged the address into Google Maps and started driving. As I got closer, the houses became fewer and farther apart. The street lights ended. I checked my phone. 1 bar of signal left. Great. The GPS told me I was a minute away, but all I saw was trees and an empty road. No house, no mailbox, nothing. Then my GPS announced I had arrived. I slowed the car and looked around. There was nothing here. No driveway, no house, just a narrow dirt path cutting into the trees. My gut told me to turn around, but then my phone rang. I checked the screen. Unknown number. I hesitated, but answered. "Hello?" A deep male voice responded. "Hey, I think I see you." My breath hitched. I looked up, and there he was. A man standing in the darkness, waving at me from the dirt path. I forced a polite tone. Hey, are you the one who placed the order?" "Yeah. My house is just down this path. Can you bring it here?" My fingers tightened around the steering wheel. "Hell no." I smiled, trying to keep it casual. "I can't leave the car, man. You can grab it from here." He didn't move, just stood there watching. Then, after a long pause, he muttered, "All right." I grabbed the bag and held it out of the window. The man walked over, slow and deliberate. He had a hoodie pulled low over his face, hands shoved in his pockets. When he reached the car, he stopped. Too close. Close enough that I could smell his breath. Rotten, stale. He didn't take the bag. I forced a chuckle. "You going to take your food, man?" "You sure you can't come inside for a second?" he asked, his voice almost casual. My chest tightened. What the hell kind of question was that? I forced a laugh. "Nah, I gotta get back to work." Then, slowly, he grinned. And that's when my car shook. I flinched as my car lurched to one side. A sickening hiss filled the air. A flat tire. My heart slammed, against my ribs. I hadn't hit anything. How the hell did I get a flat? The man still wasn't taking his food. He was still staring. I forced a smile. Shit. I think I got a flat. Guess I'd better call for help. He tilted his head. You can call inside. Fuck that. I grabbed my phone, but no service. I was alone with a flat tire, no signal, and a man who wasn't acting right. I couldn't just sit there. I had to do something. I stepped out of the car, keeping one hand near my pocket. I didn't carry a weapon, but I had my keys. Maybe I could use them if I had to. I crouched down to check the tire, completely shredded, like it had been slashed. The realization sent a bolt of panic through me. This wasn't an accident. This was planned. I stood up quickly, and the man was closer. Too close. You need help? He asked, almost teasing. My mouth went dry. Then, headlights appeared behind me. A truck. Two men got out. Hey, you good? One of them called. The man next to me stiffened. Then, without a word, he turned and walked back into the trees. The two guys stayed with me until roadside assistance arrived. When we called the cops, they ran the name and address on the order. Fake. Completely fake. I don't know what that man wanted, but it wasn't just a baconator. The next morning, the whole thing still didn't feel real. I told my parents. They freaked out. My mom wanted me to quit immediately. My dad told me to start carrying a knife or pepper spray. I told my manager too. He was actually shaken. Said from now on we'd verify sketchy addresses before sending drivers out. For the next few weeks, I was on edge. Every order felt suspicious. Then it happened again. About a month later, another order came through. Same area. Different house. I debated whether to take it. Finally, I told my manager, and he agreed I'd go, but I'd call if anything seemed off. When I got there actually was a house this time, but it was run down. Lights off. Windows broken. I called the number on the order. No answer. Then I saw something move inside. A shadow, watching me. I left immediately. After that, I put in my 2 weeks. Years later, I still think about that night. Who was that man? What did he really want? And what would have happened if that truck hadn't shown up? I don't know, and I don't want to. But I do know this. Trust your gut. Because sometimes, the wrong delivery could be your last. I never thought much about working the closing shift at Wendy's. It was just a job, something to do while saving up for college. I was 17 when I started, and like most teenagers, I didn't take the job too seriously at first. It was a typical fast food gig, dealing with impatient customers, cleaning up messes, and working under those buzzing fluorescent lights that made everything look just a little too artificial. The Wendy's I worked at wasn't in a dangerous part of town, but it wasn't exactly in the best area either. It sat in a mostly empty strip mall with a liquor store a few doors down and a gas station across the street that always seemed to have a broken pump. At night, the parking lot felt abandoned. Just a sea of cracked pavement and flickering streetlights. By my second summer there, I was one of the more experienced employees, which meant I got stuck with closing shifts more often than not. Usually, it was just me, a shift manager, and maybe one or two crew members finishing up before we locked the doors. It wasn't bad most nights, just a little lonely. But there was one night I'll never forget. It was a Friday, and the dinner rush had been relentless. We were understaffed, as usual, and by the time we started shutting everything down, I was exhausted. My shift manager, Carlos, left early. Something about his girlfriend needing a ride. And that left just me and our kitchen closer, Owen, to finish up. I didn't mind. Owen was quiet, but he worked fast. As he cleaned the fryers, I finished counting the cash drawer, double-checking that everything balanced before dropping it into the safe. It was a little after 11:30 p.m. when we finally shut off the lights and locked the doors. "See you tomorrow, man," Owen said, heading out the back exit. "Later," I called after him, tossing my apron in my locker before following him outside. The parking lot was nearly empty. Just my car and Owen's beat-up Honda. He pulled out first, leaving me alone as I walked toward my car. That's when I saw him. A man standing right next to my driver's side door. He wasn't moving, just leaning slightly, peering into the window like he was looking for something inside. My stomach clenched. "Hey," I called out, my voice sharp. "Get away from my car." The man turned his head slightly, but he didn't move. Even in the dim light, I could make out his features: scruffy beard, hollow eyes, a worn-out hoodie that looked like it hadn't been washed in months. I took a hesitant step forward, trying to act like I wasn't scared. "Yo!" I said, "Get the hell away from my car." This time he reacted. He jerked upright, turned his head toward me for just a second, just long enough for me to see something off in his eyes, then bolted. He didn't run toward the street or another parking lot. He ran straight toward the alley behind the strip mall. I stood there, frozen, my heart hammering in my chest. What the hell was he looking for in my car? I hesitated for a second, before unlocking my door, throwing myself inside, and locking it behind me. My hands trembled as I started the engine, glancing in my rearview mirror every few seconds as I sped out of the parking lot. That night, I barely slept. I tried to brush it off as a one-time thing, but the feeling of unease didn't go away. 2 nights later, I was closing again. Just me and a new kitchen worker, Tyler, who had only been working at Wendy's for a few weeks. It was a slow night, which made the shift feel longer than usual. At around 10:40 p.m., just as we were starting to clean up, the door chimed. I looked up from wiping the counter, and my stomach dropped. It was him. The same man. This time, he wasn't standing outside by my car. He was inside the restaurant, sitting at a booth near the window. He hadn't gone to the counter to order. He hadn't even acknowledged my presence. Just sat there, staring out the window like he belonged there. At Wendy's, customers were supposed to order at the front before sitting down. People didn't just walk in and take a seat. That wasn't how it worked. I swallowed hard and forced myself to walk over. "Sir," I kept my voice steady. "We close in 20 minutes. If you want to order something, you'll have to do it now." He didn't answer right away. He turned his head slowly and looked at me. His eyes were empty. "Black coffee," he finally said. His voice was rough, like he hadn't used it in a while. My skin prickled. I wanted to tell him we were out, that we were closed, that he needed to leave, but I couldn't make the words come out. Instead, I nodded stiffly and walked to the coffee machine, my hands shaking as I poured his drink. When I turned back around, I caught him watching me, not looking at me, watching me. I set the coffee on the counter. "It's $2, I said. He didn't move, didn't reach for his wallet, just kept his gaze locked onto mine. Tyler, who had been sweeping the floor nearby, must have sensed something was off, because he came over, glancing between us. "Something wrong?" The man finally blinked and dug into his pocket, pulling out a crumpled bill. He tossed it on the counter, picked up his coffee, and turned back to his booth without another word. I exhaled slowly, trying to shake the tension out of my shoulders. "He's creeping me out," I muttered to Tyler. Tyler nodded. "Want me to ask him to leave?" I hesitated, but then I nodded. "Yeah, please." Tyler walked over and kept his voice polite but firm. "Sir, we're closing soon. You'll have to finish your coffee somewhere else." The man didn't move at first. Then, without a word, he stood up. He turned toward the door, and for a brief moment, his hoodie lifted just enough for me to see something. A gun tucked into the back of his waistband. My stomach flipped. I grabbed Tyler's arm and whispered, "He has a gun!" Tyler's face paled, but he kept his composure. The man took a slow step forward, then another. He reached the door and pushed it open, disappearing into the night without looking back. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed the phone and called the police. By the time officers arrived, he was long gone. I never saw the man again. The police took our statements and told us they'd patrol the area, but nothing ever came of it. I don't know if he was planning to rob us. I don't know if he was just messing with me. All I know is that he had been in that parking lot before. He had been near my car, watching, waiting. After that night, my parents insisted on driving me home when I worked late shifts. Wendy's installed better security cameras. The manager started making sure no one left alone. But the fear never really left me. I learned a hard lesson that summer, one I still carry to this day. Sometimes, danger doesn't announce itself with a scream or a gunshot. Sometimes it walks in quietly, orders a black coffee, and watches you from across the room. Some people are born to suffer. I learned that at 16. It was the summer of 2007. Most kids my age were hanging out with friends, wasting away their last weeks of freedom before school started again. Not me. I didn't have friends. I didn't have freedom. My father made sure of that. "If you want to eat, you work," he told me one night, gripping my shoulder so hard I thought my bones would snap. "And don't come home empty-handed." He didn't ask if I wanted a job. He got me one. Wendy's. Night shift. It wasn't the worst job in the world, but it was hell for someone like me. Someone who barely slept, who was already bruised and exhausted before the shift even started. The store smelled like grease and sweat. I spent my nights scraping burnt cheese off the grill, mopping floors sticky with spilled soda, and dodging customers who were either too drunk or too angry to care that I was just a kid. The other employees weren't much better. The night crew was a mix of high school dropouts, ex-cons, and people who hated their lives enough to take it out on me. There was Trevor, the shift lead, who reeked of cigarettes and had a short temper. Maria, who barely spoke English, but could cuss someone out in 5 different languages. And then there was Derek, a guy in his 20s who always looked at me like I was in his way. I learned quickly: keep your head down, work fast, don't give anyone a reason to get pissed at you. And when the night was over, I walked home smelling like burnt oil and freezer-burnt beef, dreading what waited for me inside. My father was always waiting by the door when I got home. "How much?" he'd ask, palm open. I never got a chance to take my shoes off before I had to hand over my earnings. If it wasn't enough, I'd pay for it. "You think I'm stupid?" His voice would drop to that dangerous tone. I knew what was coming. If I denied hiding money, he'd grab me, shake me, maybe throw me against the wall like he'd done 100 times before. If I tried to run, he'd break my door down. And my mother? She was just as bad. She'd come home at sunrise, stinking of alcohol and sweat, pocketing whatever scraps my father left behind. They didn't work. They didn't have to. They had me. It was a Thursday when I realized I couldn't do it anymore. Wendy's had been brutal that night. The fryers broke down, we ran out of nuggets, and a group of drunk college guys decided I was the perfect target for their anger. "Yo, hurry the fuck up, dude," one of them slurred, slamming his hand on the counter. I was trying to get the register to stop glitching, but he wasn't interested in my excuses. "You deaf bitch? I said hurry the fuck up!" I tried to explain, but he grabbed a cup of soda and threw it at me. It hit me square in the chest. "Ha ha ha ha. You look like you pissed yourself, bro." Trevor didn't say anything. He just told me to clean up the mess and get back to work. By the time I clocked out, I felt like my legs were going to give out. I walked home slower than usual, stomach twisting. Sure enough, my father was waiting. "How much?" I pulled out the bills, already knowing it wasn't enough. His face twisted in disgust. "This it?" I nodded. "We were slow tonight." Wrong answer. His hand cracked across my face before I could react. You think I'm stupid? His fingers twisted in my shirt, yanking me close. His breath stank of beer and cigarettes. You better bring home more tomorrow, he hissed, or you'll wish you had. Then he shoved me toward the stairs. I locked my door, slid down against it, and pressed a shaking hand to my face. I couldn't do this anymore. That's when the idea hit me. I knew where the home phone was. I knew what I had to do. I waited until the house was silent. Until my father was passed out in his chair, beer bottles scattered around him. Until my mother had disappeared to God knows where. Then I crept downstairs. Every step was a risk. The wooden floor creaked beneath me, but I kept going. The phone sat on the counter next to an ashtray filled with cigarette butts. My hands trembled as I picked it up. 911. The line rang. 911. What's your emergency? My voice was barely above a whisper. I need to report domestic abuse. The dispatcher kept me on the line, asking questions. I answered as best I could, my breath shaking. Then I heard it. Sirens. I froze. My father's eyes snapped open before the cops even reached the house. He was already on his feet, stumbling toward the kitchen. What the hell did you do? Then the cops were inside. They swarmed the house, grabbing him before he could reach me. He screamed, kicking and thrashing, face red with rage. My mother arrived just in time to be handcuffed too, her drunken confusion quickly turning into anger. An officer turned to me. You okay, kid? I wanted to say no, that I was broken, that I didn't know how to be okay. But instead, I nodded. And just like that, my life changed forever. My parents got 6 years. Not long enough. I was sent to live with my uncle. He wasn't perfect, but at least he wasn't a monster. I finished school, got another job, built a life of my own. But some nights, I still wake up in a cold sweat, expecting to hear my father's voice outside my door. The difference is, now, I know he can't hurt me. Not anymore. And that's worth everything. It's been years since that night. I try not to think about it, but sometimes, when I close my eyes, I swear I can still hear the register beeping. I can still smell the grease and burnt beef. And sometimes, just sometimes, I see something else. A shadow standing by the counter at Wendy's, watching, waiting. I tell myself it's just my imagination, but deep down, I know the truth. Some places, some memories, they don't let you go. And no matter how far I run, there's no way out.